Feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank.
Welcome back to another episode of the Shrimp Tank, coming to you virtually from Seattle, the Pacific Northwest, and down I-5 into the Bay Area. Listen, if you want to start, grow, or develop a brand new business or make your business better, this is the podcast for you. This is where street smarts and book smarts collide. Hello again, everyone. I'm Dan Weedin. My co-host down in the Bay Area is Linda Popky. And this is an unusual day. Normally, I would be telling you right now about our guest. Unfortunately, well, I guess, Linda, we could say it's both a good and a bad thing.
Yeah.
The bad thing is Aaron Murphy couldn't make it. The good reason is that his son has advanced in the high school tennis. I don't know where they are, if they're in state yet or in districts, but he's advanced. I know he's like a freshman, so I think it's a little bit of a surprise. And so Aaron, of course, had to be there. So no guest today, but we have a surprise for you. Before we do, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts: iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, YouTube. Linda, because why?
We are ubiquitous.
We are. We come to you from a whole bunch of cities, including Atlanta, Boston, and Boca Raton. And now, here's what we're going to do. We're anything but flexible, Linda. You and I are going to chat a little bit. I have a topic I want to talk to you about. I hope that people will find the topic, especially if they're running a business, whether they have a number of employees or they're a solopreneur. I hope they'll find this topic of interest. But before we do, I think I understand that you are about to embark on a camp, not a day camp, but a camp, an adult camp. It's the first time in 3 years you've gotten to go because of COVID. Tell everybody where you're going and what you're doing.
Okay, so I'm going to piano camp. Not going
piano camp. Everybody, if you didn't hear that, piano camp. I want to hear more about piano camp.
Okay, so there is an organization in Bennington, Vermont, which is not far from Albany, New York, called Sonata and Sonatina. And for over 50 years, they have been running camps, first summer camps for kids, for music, to teach people piano. And then what happened is the parents said, well, we want that too. So about 40 years ago, they started doing camps for adults. And it's 10 days in this beautiful old mansion in Vermont with, 40 rooms and a piano in every room, except I think the kitchen and the bathrooms. And we practice, but we have lessons, we have classes, we have performances, we have concerts, we have dueling pianos. We have
dueling piano. Tell me about dueling pianos.
So we have something we call monsters, which is where we have a room with about 6 pianos, and there's 2 people to a piano. We're all playing the same thing, like a piano orchestra. So we're supposed to play together, but it doesn't always work that way. But we do that. But we have it's just a wonderful respite and there are people there who are beginners, and there are people who are very advanced, and everybody in between. And Wow. It's just a lovely way to get away. And I'm looking forward to it, because they did do it virtually during the pandemic. Not quite the same thing.
I can't even believe it's close to the same thing. And Vermont's going to be, I got to believe Vermont's going to be beautiful this time of year. So I wish you all the best. In fact, Vermont's one of the states I still haven't made it to. Maybe I should go to piano camp next year as a beginner.
There you go. We'll take you as a beginner. You'd enjoy it. You'd have fun. You know what? There's a golf course not far down the road. So
okay. Now you may have sold it to me. So listen, like I said, our guest Aaron Murphy can't make it. We'll have him again. He's got a great business, and he was very sorry to miss. But of course, as we all know, those of us who have kids, that's important. It's incredibly important. It sounds like for his son a wonderful opportunity. You send out a newsletter every week. I subscribe to it, and believe it or not, Linda, I occasionally do read them. And I read this one. You and Lisa Anderson are the head honchos for the Society for the Advancement of Consulting. It's a great organization. I'm a member of SAC, and the most recent conference, which I couldn't make. And unfortunately, I had tons of stuff going on, even though it was virtual. I think one of the main issues that you highlighted in your newsletter was the topic of reinvention. So here we are, Linda, we're in Q4 of 2022. It's hard to believe that we're now literally almost like 2 years past the onslaught of when the pandemic started. And I'm going to give my very quick reinvention story, and then I want to talk to you about some of the things that you learned at the conference and your own. So when the pandemic started in March of 2020, I'll never forget sitting at my desk and wondering to myself. Now I've worked from home since 2005. You work from home
Right.
too. That was no big
Yeah.
deal. I was like,
Yeah, that
okay,
was
so
easy.
what? No, same old, same old. But I was always leaving. I was always out. I was networking. I was meeting with clients face to face. I was doing all of that stuff. And now I wasn't. And I thought to myself, what if I can never leave my home again? Now I knew that wasn't going to be the case. I think at least I thought I did, but what if it wasn't? And as a risk management expert, I realized I needed to do some thinking. So I reinvented and I actually like the word reimagine better. I reimagined my business. And now 2 years later, really kind of embarking on doing more video, more online courses, more podcasts, just like this, really turning my business more into a digital entrepreneurship. So I don't have to leave I don't want to leave my house anymore. I've got everything I need here, and I don't need the traffic, and I don't need all of that other stuff, but it's working. And so really though, it was very intentional. And I know that that's probably a conversation that came up during the SAC conference, and I'm hoping to watch the videos of those later. So enough of me. Let's talk about, what you learned with a whole bunch of world-class consultants from around the world. And have you had to do any reinvention?
So lots of good stuff there. Yeah, I mean, who knew back in March of 2020? Here we are almost to 2023, and we still are not to anywhere what we used to call normal, which I don't think is ever coming back. But first of all, let me say, the world we live in is changing so fast. We're always reinventing. You and I are reinventing this podcast because
We are.
Reinventing.
This is right in the moment we're reinventing. That's right.
Yeah. So what happens is, and we talked a lot about this, is you cannot wait for the world to go back to the way it was. It's not going back, and it's not even going to stabilize. We thought we were through the pandemic, and then what happened in February, we had this horrible war in Ukraine, which Putin thought would last 2 weeks. It's been almost a year.
That's
I don't
right.
know when it's going to end, but it's caused all kinds of issues about supply chain in terms of food, in terms of fuel to Europe, in terms of inflation. We have all these issues that are changing all the time. Who would have guessed even a year ago that we'd be talking about what's going on in Ukraine and whether people in Germany can heat their houses in the winter, right? Who would have thought that we have to worry if our customers and our clients could afford to use our services because inflation has gone through the roof, right? Who would worry if you're in real estate? Who would think, that the market's going to go out from under you because nobody can afford a mortgage? So you can sit and say, I'm going to wait for it to all get fixed. Or you can say, here's where we are. Let's throw out the playbook from the old days and let's see where we go from here. And so that's really what we spend a lot of time working on and talking about. And how do you reinvent yourself? How do you help your clients and your customers reinvent themselves? How do you, and I like the word reimagine. I think that's a great word.
So let me, before we move on, because that's really a good, something you said just caught my attention. Actually two things. Number one is the velocity of life and business. Even though it's all the same from 30 years ago, it's not the same. Everything is going so much faster, and the need to reimagine, to reinvent, however we're gonna term it for today, it's a constant. But you said something there about reinventing themselves. And I'm a believer that the reinvention is not just about our business, it's about ourselves as individuals, because you and I were talking before the podcast. 2022 has been quite a tumultuous year for both of us. A lot of good, some a lot bad. And I realized, that happens all the time. That happens every year. We just don't seem to remember it because there's a new year. Talk about helping clients, and maybe for the people listening, talking about themselves individually and maybe the people they serve, reinventing yourself personally before you even start to try to reinvent your business.
Well, I think that's a really good point, because you've got to start change. You've got to start with yourself, right? You can't expect everything else to change around you. You have to be changing and evolving. And it's not so much a matter of turning yourself into something you're not, but saying the world is different. Where am I going to be looking forward now? So I think part of it starts with your outlook. We can sit here and say, oh, woe is me, the world is terrible, everything is bad, I'll just go back in my hole. Or we can say, even in the worst of times, there's opportunities, and I can help people. I can help people, whether it's through, depending what your business is. For you, I can help people manage the risks. I can help people lower some of the risks that might be going on that they might not even have thought about a couple of years ago. For other people, it might be helping, there's a trade-off they have to make now if there's a cost issue and there's inflation. But certainly, I think you have to reinvent yourself in terms of saying, where do I want to be a year from now? Where do I want to be 2 years from now? Because if you don't start to take small steps, you're going to get here a year from now and you're going to be back where you were a year ago. So that doesn't do anybody any good, and it doesn't do us any good as people, because we had a couple of weeks ago, we had on the people who talked about keeping their employees healthy. And as you keep yourself healthy and your body healthy, you become more productive to yourself and to your employees and to your customers and whatever. But you've got to start by saying, who am I and where do I want to be? You can't just sit here and say, I'm going to sit and wait till it all happens, because then something will happen to you, and it probably won't be what you want to have happen.
Yeah. And for anybody listening, that was Dana and Kevin Rindall from Vimosity. It's a good, really, really good podcast to go listen to. It's funny because I listened, we had a recent podcast with Michelle Baumberger, was my co-host on this, with Hannah Smolinski, who is a CFO strategist. She works, kind of as a CFO function for her clients. And during the pandemic, she created a YouTube station that grew to 36,000 YouTube listeners, and she's become ubiquitous there, and she makes money. I also had, it's interesting because I want to talk about YouTube for a second. Friend of mine, Tim Forrest, you may know Tim. He's a restaurant consultant. He helps people they make food makers into millions of dollars. I mean, it's amazing what he's done. He gets 100% of his clients come from his YouTube channel, which to me is astounding. And so that's, when people start thinking about reimagining who they are and what they're doing, and their marketing as part of that, it's never been easier to create branding and your own commercial. Remember back in the day, a commercial would take tons of money to make,
and time.
Tons of effort, and then it was obsolete by the time it was good, right?
Yeah. And brochures, we can brochures. Yeah.
Well, we can be sharing all of what we're doing in real time in marketing. I know marketing is your bailiwick. So maybe I'd like to hear from you. What are some of the things? How can people reimagine their branding and their marketing and what they're doing out there?
So I think that's a really great question, because again, I think anything that you imagined that you were, or where your business was before March of 2020 is obviously gone away. But even where you were on June of 2022 is no longer relevant, because the world is changing. So what you've got to do is to look at who do you want to reach, and what are the things that are going to attract them to you? How can you help them? Because you're here not to make money for yourself, but if you're going to be, obviously that's a side effect. We want that to happen. But if you're going to be successful, you're going to be successful because you're standing out, because you are doing things that people need. You're providing a service, you're providing value. So you're not there to sell them something, you're there to help them, whether it's help them get healthy, help them start a new restaurant, help them do whatever it is. So stop and think about what we keep thinking about all the new things we should do. The first thing is to stop and think about, what should I stop doing? What are the things that I have been doing that are taking up time and energy and money that I don't need to do anymore? And in some cases, it might be something, if you have a brick and mortar location, it might be something in the location. Maybe you don't need the brick and mortar location. Maybe you can go online. But even if you're on virtual, maybe you're doing something that you don't need to do anymore. So stop doing that so you have the time and space to create something new. And then think about if you were to declare success a year from now, you and I were sitting here a year from now, and we said it's been a fantastic year, what would we have accomplished? So
Yeah.
stop and think about what it is you want to do, and how is it that your clients, your customers would be better off because you're here. If you were not in the world today, if you disappeared, you got abducted by aliens, what would they be missing? I mean, what would be different? So you want them to say, where is she? Where is he? Where'd Dan go? I need him. Right? So you need to think about, what is it that's value that you can provide in today's world.
I love that you went with abducted with aliens. I like that a lot. I mean, we didn't go the proverbial got hit by a bus or anything like that. I
That's
just
funny.
like
Yeah.
Cocoon, I went up with the aliens. So people are some people might say, Cocoon, what's that? Well, it's a Ron Howard film. Go back to the 80s, Wilford Brimley, all of that.
Netflix, I'm sure. Go to Netflix. You'll find
I'm sure it is. So listen, I can't believe it. We're already 15 minutes in, so we do have to pay the bills. I'm going to go ahead and do our ad read here, and then we'll come back with more, because I got a question for you. So here's our sponsor, for our headline sponsor. Does this sound like you? I'd love to write a book, but I just don't have the time. In fact, I'm not even sure where to start. Maybe you have a compelling story to share or valuable advice for clients and prospects. If only you could get that story out of your head and into a published format. Think you don't have time to write a book? Think you aren't a good enough writer to get your message across? Think this all sounds too overwhelming? Well, think again. At Leverage to Market Associates, we help aspiring authors transform that long-stuck book idea into an attractive published work. If you've written most of your book, we can help edit your work and drive it through the production process. If you're not sure where to start, we'll coach you through the creative process to organize your thoughts and to create a compelling book outline. And if you're just not comfortable writing a book yourself, we can ghost write for you. So see, we have aliens and ghosts all here in October.
Halloween is coming, yeah.
Contact Linda Popky, of course, Leverage to Market Associates, for a complimentary evaluation of your nonfiction book concept today, and bring your book to life. And of course, Linda, you helped me edit Back Nine Walking. I know you didn't touch anything Captain Jack wrote, because his words were impeccable. So
Nope.
anyway, thank you for sponsoring. Thanks for being a co-host. We don't really have a hot or not, but I want you to talk. I want to read to you the last paragraph. You may recall it, the last paragraph of your weekly missive, and I want you to talk about it. Yes, what are you doing to reinvent yourself and your organization for what's coming? The choice is not about whether or not to change. It's about whether you consciously take control of the situation or let someone else reinvent your world instead. I thought this was a very powerful paragraph. I'm going to read the main part again. The choice is not about whether or not to change. It's whether you consciously take control of the situation or let someone else reinvent your world instead. Can you wax poetic a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's not a matter of sitting here saying everything's going to be the same. And if what worked last week is going to work this week, is going to work next week, is going to work in 2023. Things are changing. If you don't take control of that, someone else will pigeonhole you. They'll position you differently. So if you don't position yourself in the minds of your customers and prospects with what you want them to remember about you, someone else will say, oh, no, here's what they do. Here's what we do. And it may be correct, but more often than not, it's not. So why would you put your destiny and your future in someone else's hands? You need to reach out and you need to talk to your customers. And here's the thing to do. Go to your customers who love you. I mean, you've got customers, you've got clients, you've got people who buy from you on a regular basis. And just say, number one, how are you doing? Because there's a lot going on in the world. So stop and do that. And then say, here's what we've been doing for you. We're looking forward to the future. What are you going to need from us that's different? How can we help you? Let's brainstorm. Can we help you do some things differently in the future? What else would you like to see from us? Now, it's possible that they're going to give you some ideas that, well, offer your service for free. That's not going to happen. Maybe it's create a kind of product that's just ridiculous. But more often than not, they may give you an idea like, if you just tweak this a little, I would do more with it. I would like this a lot. I could recommend you if you did this. So ask your customers, your clients, your prospects, people people that can refer you. What is it that you think that people need from people like me? And take control. So rather than waiting for them to come to you and say, here's something new I need, see if you can figure out what it is that they're looking for and then provide it before someone else does.
So, what's interesting, if I think of myself, number one as a consumer, and then number two as a professional service provider, I've seen a lot more of this with my colleagues. And I've also used what I'm about to say more often as a consumer. It feels like ease of use, ease of accessibility is not only on the rise. If you're not doing it, you've got problems. And so that's everything from a mobile app to some sort of instant access or near instant access. So for example, I have a wonderful doctor. I've actually had him on the show before. And we have a situation where they have a mobile app that I can just type a question in and say, whatever the case is. I remember once I was going to take a plane trip and I had a cold and I wanted to know what to take. And she wrote back and said, here, get some Afrin at the near, and that was it. But it wasn't necessarily immediate, but it was pretty quick. And so this whole concept of ease of use, ease of accessibility, ease of getting information, and people are willing to pay for that. They're willing to buy into that because it's making lives easier. And I just wonder, for those listening, some thoughts that you might have on what you heard, especially during the conference, in ways that businesses are making it easier to do business with them.
So I think there's a couple. I think you're absolutely right. There's ease of use. There's also something I'm going to call respect for the customer, which is, we've all had this happen. You have some kind of issue, something, maybe it's got to do with a doctor or medical provider, maybe it's going to do with an insurance company, your health insurance isn't paying for something. You get on hold with the pharmacy because you can't get your prescription filled, all those types of things. And what starts to happen, you get somebody in a call center, maybe not even here, maybe offshore, limited amount of English, they're reading from a script and they're answering the same question regardless of what you say, right? You're getting the same thing back and you're not getting anywhere. And it's, it's kind of like where the first thing that when you call customer support, they say, did you turn your computer on? Did you plug it? Make sure it's plugged in. Yeah, I've done that. Don't presume that I,
right,
that I'm totally brain dead. Give your customers and your prospects the feeling that you respect them and you understand that they're intelligent people. They have feelings, they have things going on in their life, and you're there to help, not hinder. Too often, too many of these things, I think, are just, they're processes set in place to get the most transactions done in the least amount of time. And what starts to happen is people say, I don't like the way I was treated. And then they walk. And I think what's important about what you said about this mobile app with your medical provider, I also have a concierge doctor that I work with. And when she first decided to become a concierge doctor years ago, I thought, what do I need that for? But I like her, I'll go with it. And there's something about being able to say, I have a problem, what do I do? Yep, do this. It's huge. People will pay for that. And in a type of market we're in now, people will start to filter out and to decide what they're going to keep and what they're not going to keep, because they're reinventing how they spend their money too.
Right.
And they will pay for things that they see have value. They either either it's something that information they need right away, like what you needed, or service they couldn't get somewhere, or people that treat them well. People will go back to restaurants that are more expensive if they know they're being treated well. And they won't go back to ones that are less expensive if they feel like the food is garbage, or the food could be good and the service is terrible. So
it's so funny you said that, Linda. I was out a couple weeks ago playing golf, and I'll throw out their name because I'm going to say nice things about them at Chambers Bay Golf Course in University Place, which is near Tacoma. Held the U.S. Open many years ago, and 7 years ago. Just held the Women's U.S. Amateur, and it's not an inexpensive place to play. I'm just going to say that it's actually on the very high end. And that's why I play it in September and October, because it's considered winter rates now, even though we've been a balmy 70 degrees. But it's much more affordable, but it's not even then, it's not inexpensive at all. But I was mentioning to my playing partners is, it's amazing. I go to a lot of different golf courses. The more expensive golf courses, and sometimes the higher stature ones, treat you so much better. And there's a customer service aspect. And I've walked into golf courses where they literally just take your money and barely acknowledge you. It's funny because in this case, the guy behind in the pro shop, I had a free pass because of working the volunteering. And he goes, didn't you post on Instagram about, I said, I did. He said, I saw it. And I said, no, you did. And he did, he actually did. We had a nice conversation. And it was like, whether he did or didn't, he made the experience better. And I just want to remind people that even though we have inflation going, and even though all these costs are up and all of this, your clients, your customers are still willing to buy from you. They're still willing to pay a fair price, because it's really become, it's so much, it's never not been, but it's even more so. It's about the value and experience received.
Absolutely. Yes, you have got to provide both good value and a positive experience. And what you want is for me to go tell other people, right, about it. And I'm going to tell people if I like it, and I'll tell people if I don't. If I'm not sure, I don't really care. But if I like something, I will tell 3 or 4 people. If I don't like something, I may tell 10 people. Now, that's the way it used to be. Now I go to social media, and when I post in 3 places or 10 places, that's amplified. And so if you've done something bad, that gets out there very, very quickly. But if you've done something good, and I say, hey, that's a great golf course. Yes, it's not cheap, but they really treated me well. I just wanted to say, how nice it was to be recognized by the pro, blah, 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 blah. That's something people pay attention to too. And so that is extremely important. And the other thing to remember is, this is one of my favorite lines. It came from the movie with, oh God, now I can't think, with my brain is where they're doing the heist in Las Vegas, and
Ocean's 11.
Ocean's 11. Thank you.
There you go. I knew I could help you out.
Ocean 11. There we go. Thank you. And Julia Roberts is got her boyfriend who runs the casino, and they show her the tape of him doing things he shouldn't be doing. And
I think it was Andy Garcia, by the way, wasn't it?
Andy Garcia was great actor. Too bad we lost him. But so they show her this tape, and he says, well, how did you see this? And she says, you more than anyone else should know, there is always someone watching. And that's, remember, in today's world, there's always someone watching. There's someone with a cell phone. There's someone with a video. So if something goes down that's bad, somebody's going to capture it, and they're going to talk about it, and they're going to put it on social media. They're going to get it on the news. Something good happens, might not be as newsworthy, but there's always someone watching, and there's always someone that's looking and trying to say, hey, what's going on today? So be aware of that and act like someone's always watching.
Well, we're going to pick up on that concept, because I have something that I want to bring back to the reinvention. But I will say this before we take our second break. Being mediocre is also no good. You didn't have to necessarily do anything bad. if there's that old thing, I'd rather have bad news. At least somebody's talking about me. Now that may not be exactly true, but the worst thing I think is apathy and not being able to be seen. So anyway, we're going to talk a little bit about that with reinvention. I am going to take the second short break to highlight our corporate sponsors. Thank you to Ideal Life 360, Cornerstone Financial, First Underwriters Insurance, the Kitsap Sun Newspaper Group, BC Fitness Studio, and the Upstart Group. Everyone, please visit our website. It's new, improved, beautiful website, shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle, to learn more about our terrific companies. So Linda, I want to mention this because we deviated just a tad because we were talking about reinvention and we got into this, but I think it's all part of it. Because when you are being intentional about reinvention, that concept of high quality, of high value, that has to be part of the thinking too. Because, as I was going through my own reinvention, in my mind, it sounded like, oh, this sounds like it's a great idea. Yeah, but if it's not a great idea or doesn't fit the needs of the people who I want, then it's not so good. There's really got to be some work and asking of questions and finding out, hey, it's kind of like that. How can I make your life better, easier, more rewarding, more profitable, whatever it is that you do? This is not a ready, fire, aim process as much as some of us like me like that. Talk about, again, maybe what you learned at SAC about some real intentionality about reinvention.
So I think you're absolutely right, is you can't do this in a vacuum. You can't just say, I'm going to be something, I'm going to be I'm going to be an Olympic athlete tomorrow. Yeah, well, that would be nice. But it isn't going to happen. So, and I think, the basketball season started yesterday. So my Golden State Warriors had, started defending.
I've heard of them.
You've heard of them a few times. Steph Curry is up there. He's had gotten more 3-point shots than anybody in the history of the game. He was the MVP of the finals, blah, 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 blah. He's out there before every game shooting those baskets as if he was a rookie. Okay. Why does he do that? He does that because he's looking to see how he can get better, how he can reinvent himself. Can I try it from a different angle? What if someone comes at me this way? So no matter how good you are, you have to look and say, how can I get better? And how am I going to reinvent myself? Now, he's not going to turn into Tom Brady and start being a quarterback. So there's, you have to do it within the sphere of where you're good. But I think that's important and again, it's not a matter of having to throw everything away. It's not reinvent from scratch, but it's take where you are and tweak it a little here and tweak it a little there, see what works, get some feedback, either keep on going, go in a different direction, just keep the process moving.
So this is normally where we do plead the fifth, Linda. So I'm going to throw a plead the fifth to you. Plead the fifth, Linda. Where have you recently or maybe in process doing some of your own reinvention?
Where am I doing my own reinvention? I'm reinventing kind of how I approach a lot of different things in my life that have been kind of stacking up. So getting more focused on getting healthy and getting into shape, looking at where I can offload things I don't need to do, that we're just doing forever, and saying no to things, saying no to more people, more things. I'm at a point now where, I want to work with a lot of clients, but if I find someone in the prospect process that seems like they're going to be very needy and require a lot of management and be difficult, I may not be the right person to work for them. So being able to say no is, I think, an important thing, and being able to say, I'm not going to do that anymore. Here's where I'm going to focus. And that's sort of an ongoing effort of reinvention for me.
So here's my next plead the fifth, and it's really not a plead the fifth, but just a question for you. Somebody's listening to this and they say, boy, that Linda and Dan, they're really smart. I'm going to start reinventing. I haven't thought about it. And let's not worry about what type of industry they're in or what type of business, but they don't know where to start. And certainly there are people like us out there who can help them with that. But just from a kind of what's the first step type of thing, in addition to maybe hiring somebody to help them through that process, what's some of the strategic thinking or some of the activities and behaviors that they can start the process as we head into Q1 of 2023? A lot of people are thinking about that now. What can you tell them to help?
So I think there's a couple of things. I think start whether it's a piece of paper or you put it on a screen, or whatever, wherever your method you like, but you make a list to say, here's what I'm doing now that is really good. This is what I like. Okay, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. I have these customers, I'm doing whatever. Here are the things I'm not happy with today. Here's where I'd like to be. Like we said, what is success a year from now? And where do these lists kind of, to get from point A to point B, what do I have to change? I want to keep some of these things. What things can I cross out? Where do I see things changing? Is the price of a commodity or, something that goes into my product or service going to change, or the availability of something going to change? How am I going to handle that? Where are the obstacles? So start just kind of making a list of what you want to keep, what you like, who you like to work with. I want to work with a new set of clients. I want to go off to an area that I haven't served before, whether it's geographically, because now we can do this because we work remote, or whether it's I'm going to offer a new set of services. What do I have to do that's different? So I think the key point is saying, what do I want to keep? Where do I want to be? And what's the gap? What's in between there that I have to do differently? And once you start to identify that, then you can get into the how am I going to do it?
Yeah.
Too often people jump right into the how. I'm going to go off and do this, this, and this. And what they're doing, the analogy I use is they're climbing a mountain and they get to the top of the mountain. And it's not even the wrong mountain, but they say, I shouldn't have been mountain climbing. I really been looking down. I should have been, underwater, diving. And I don't have the right equipment and I'm in the wrong place. And it's a lovely mountain, but this is not where I want it to be. So don't go climb the whole mountain before you decide you're in the wrong place. Figure out where it is you want to go, and then you can figure out how to get there. The how comes after the what.
Well, and it's interesting you say that, because I want to piggyback. I also think one of the factors that often gets missed by entrepreneurs of all types is the 3-letter word called fun. At some point, all of us went into our respective businesses for freedom, for flexibility, and for fun, because we didn't like being employees. I've often joked that I didn't consider myself a very good employee because I didn't like the lack of freedom, flexibility, and fun. However, for a lot of us, and I'll just throw everybody out there, we can get bored. We can, I talked with our friend Dean Robinson, and he talked about the crisis of boredom. If you've never talked to Dean about the crisis of boredom, it's really fascinating. And he had talked about kind of this 7-year cycle. Everybody's got a different one, but sometime in that 5 to 7 years, it's pretty easy to find yourself at a job, a job that you've got, and you're the boss and you don't like you much anymore. And so I think part of reinvention is that, things can change, and we might actually get bored with what we're doing. What do we want to do that's fun? What do we want to do that gives us energy? And in my mastermind group that I work, we talk a lot about that. What gives you energy? Why do you want to do this? Maybe it sounds good for, from a perspective of marketing or all of that, but are you going to have fun? Will it bring you energy? Will it revitalize you? And I think that that's a really important part of reimagining your business, reinventing your business. Could you just talk a little bit about the fun factor?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I think some of us have left the corporate world and now to work for ourselves. And now we have a manager that's even worse, right? Someone we have a taskmaster that won't let us off the hook at all. But I think there's really 3 areas you need to look at when you're trying to decide what to do. One is you have to have competency. If you're not good at something,
right?
Bother. The second, there has to be a market need for it. And the third is you got to have passion for it. So there are things I'm good at that the market wants, but I would just go crazy if I did those. So we too often look at the first 2 and not the third, because you're right. You got to have fun. Life is too short. We can't have can't do some of the fun things we used to do a couple of years ago. And so we've had to reinvent what that means. Now there's the ability to get together in person and travel and do some things we couldn't do. But what is it that re-energizes you?
Yeah.
I'm getting on a plane tomorrow. I'm going to piano camp. That's
Yeah.
my, I have a lot of deadlines and things. I'm going to get them done before I go as best as I can. And then I'm not available next week. So that's my way of saying, hey, I want to do this. But in the business, I get bored very, very easily, which is one reason I'm in my own business. If I was in a company and doing the same thing every day, every week, I would not be a very good employee. So as an entrepreneur, you have to look and say, where am I having fun and where am I not? And if it's important to the business, but it's not fun for you, get someone else to do it. You know, whether it's someone in your company or you bring in an outsider to do it. You know, it's like, I don't know, maybe some people have fun doing taxes. I don't think it's fun at all, but certainly CPAs get into it. You couldn't pay me enough to do my own taxes, right? So we do that with things like that. I'm certainly not going to start rewiring my house. I'm going to bring in an electrician, right?
Right.
So there are times like that where we say no question, but there's other times where there's things in the business. If you are trying to save a few dollars by doing something that is drudgery and is bringing you down, you're not helping yourself. Bring somebody in who has fun doing that, and then you figure out where your passion is and take that energy and use it to really build something that's going to be fun for you.
Well, what's been fun has been this. Aaron's loss has been our gain. I hope everybody enjoyed this conversation about reinventing. Linda, thank you for this conversation. You probably don't have your script up, so I'm going to read your part of it. Make sure everybody that you check out all the replays on shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle, wherever you get your podcasts. We're on iHeartRadio, Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. Please also join us on our social media pages, especially on Facebook, because that is where we live stream every week. So Linda, thank you very much. Have a great time at piano camp. Does anybody ever play The Piano Man by Billy Joel? Is that one of?
I have seen people have played it. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Because, I know there's Mozart and Beethoven and all those folks, but let's talk a little Billy Joel here. I mean, he wrote a song about the piano. Yeah. So anyway, have a great.
I'll tell you what, if you come to camp, we'll let you play piano.
Sounds like a deal. Linda, have a great time. We'll see you back in the tank next month. Everybody, our next show will be on Wednesday, October 26th. Our guest will be Amy Eklund from Amy Works. And my co-host will be Michelle Baumberger. So in the meantime, be safe, be well, be prosperous, go reimagine yourself, because until next week, let me try that again. Until next week, the shrimp is back in the tank. So long.
I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank.